Hello, my most amazing art students. So today we're going to be working on creating a perspective, a simple perspective. Okay, so you're going to need a ruler and a pencil. Where's my pencil? There it is. Ruler and a pencil for now. Okay, so let's just begin by lining up our ruler to draw our horizon line. Our horizon line is the line that bisects, which means cuts in half. And you can do it. It doesn't have to quite be half. It can be a third. Cuts the paper in half, okay? Where when you look out into over the horizon, you know, is where the sun where you'd see the sun setting, or over the ocean, okay? So then just draw I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, so you draw your horizon line. Now on that horizon line, we are going to place a point. We are going to be drawing a 1-point perspective. A while back, let's see, we talked about a piece of art. I don't know if you can still hear. And we learned about perspective. We had this piece of art, The Marriage of the Virgin Mary, and then The Last Supper. And we talked a lot about perspective and how all these lines converge to one point on the perspective. All these lines go to 1 point. Okay? So I think you can still access that lesson if you want to watch the videos. On that, there's that really cool video with Al Roker where he talks about Masaccio and the discovery of the perspective, and it's pretty interesting stuff, how perspective is used. So we have our point on our line, and let me see if we can, is that a better focus? Okay. And we're going to take our ruler, we're going to create our field. Every single line that we draw, this ruler is a mess because it keeps, you guys, I'm so sorry. Well, I'm going to color it over anyway. I don't know what's on this ruler, but it's creating marks on my paper. So we're going to put our pencil on our line, and we're going to line up our ruler, and then we're going to draw a line out from that point. Every single line that we draw is going to radiate from that 1 point on the horizon. Okay? I don't like to have that middle point go straight down, like straight at you. I like to have it a little off center because it looks a little odd if it's just straight on. These do not have to be even. We're just drawing multiple lines to denote different crops maybe in our field. Okay, this is just not a realistic painting. So once you have all of your lines drawn like this on your paper, then what we're going to talk about is our background. Obviously this area is the foreground, where the horizon line is the middle ground, and then we have our background. Now I will post a few pictures of perspective, things drawn in perspective, and Al Roker talked about it in his videos as well. When things are drawn in perspective, say there's a fence right here, and the fence reaches maybe up to here. I'll just kind of draw it in. You do not have to draw this. You would still put that fence line to the perspective line, and then every line that you draw needs to be vertical, not tilted. Vertical, 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 straight up and down. But notice that it gets smaller and smaller as it recedes to the point of perspective. Now, in real life, does the fence get smaller and smaller as it gets farther away? No, it's the same height in reality, but our eye perceives it as it goes off into the distance as getting smaller and smaller. That's what our eye perceives. So, just for the sake of understanding, if you were to draw trees here, it would be the same thing. If it was like with an orchard with trees that were all planted at the same time, and they would all technically be similar in height, right? And they would go back in the recede into the distance. So this is just my depiction. You do not have to draw that fence. It's just me explaining. But what you do have to draw is our background. Now, we're doing a farm scene, so we're going to start by drawing a farmhouse. You can choose which side you draw your farmhouse on. It doesn't matter to me. It's going to be the same instructions, just drawn to a different angle, depending on which side you choose. So in order to begin our farmhouse, we need to, again, draw these vertical lines. And technically, depending on how large this field is, if this house was like very far off in the distance, it would be very, very small. But, because we're just playing with reality here and drawing our own depiction, we're going to draw a large farmhouse. So this is the front of my farmhouse. I drew a square. I'm actually going to make this a bit smaller, more into a rectangle than a square. No big deal. Okay. So I am going to put a triangular roof. In order to do that, I'm just going to try to see the middle of this. Put a dot here where I think the middle is, and then go from there. That way I can kind of gauge where my triangle should fit. So now we have a rectangle and a triangle. The side of the building is going to follow the perspective lines. So in order to do that, I'm going to put my pencil on the corner and draw as if this building were receding. Put my pencil on the tip of the roof, match up my ruler with the perspective line, and notice I'm just leaving these lines hanging because I don't know how long I want my building to be. I guess I will put it, I want the roof to be a tad longer than the building, so I'm just going to use that line that I drew. Remember, these lines are vertical, and so this line, what I do for the back end of the roof line is I follow the same line that I drew for the front of the roof. I match it up with my ruler, and then I slide my ruler over to that point on the back of the roof there, and I draw the same angle the same slant, the same diagonal on the front of the roof and the back of the roof. Okay, that's just kind of how I fudge the roof. It's not perfect. It's just how I kind of get it to look like it's a three-dimensional building. Now, in my original one, I did draw a secondary building right next to the barn-sized building here, and you are welcome to do that. You follow the same guidelines. Maybe it's set back a little bit from the house, in which case you're going to draw it a little farther over. If it was evenly on the same plane, it would just start right next to it, like this one does. I started it right here next to it and then went, but say this one's set a little bit farther back. Now, I'm going to follow the same tips. I'm just free drawing this rectangle, which means I'm not using my ruler. And we need to erase the back side of this one because this building's going to overlap it. And this one's in front of that, so we won't be able to see. Now we're following that same thing where we use the corner of this building and match it up, and the tippy top of the roof, match it up with our perspective line, and then we draw the back side of this, and then we use the pitch of this roof, the angle of this roof, match it up with that back corner by sliding our ruler over, and there we have two buildings. And I like to just kind of draw this roof overhanging a little bit. Now, if this roof overhangs, I forgot to mention, this roof overhanging on this side, you can match up that edge of the pitched roof and just draw a little angle, and that will show you exactly which angle that roof goes at. So, in order to draw a tree here, we did draw with pastel, so it's kind of easy, but you can just sketch in a little tree, depending on how, a lot of farmhouse trees are much bigger than the buildings that they're around. Now, as it gets closer, right, we're going to have a much smaller tree, and you can do true trees. It's going to be a lot smaller than the first one that you drew, not going to be as tall. And it's not really following the perspective line because that other one gets in the way, but we're showing forced perspective by drawing that tree smaller. So there's 2 trees. I did draw just kind of a fence coming off. This is not in perspective because it's on the horizon plane. And it doesn't need to be. So, and then, obviously putting in the door, the barn door area here. I did the X as the barn door, And then any window or door that you have on the perspective side of the house is going to have to follow the perspective lines, which means if I had a window, the edge lines would be vertical, right? But the window would have to follow the perspective, so we'd have to line up the top and the bottom of the window with the perspective line and then do another vertical line. Now, you can get really nitpicky and draw the interior. You would see the top of this window if it had a casing. So you would see into it like that because you're lower than that. Same thing with, we would see, the edge of this roof over here because of the way that the perspective is. So, up to you guys how you draw your barns or houses or farm structures. You can put a windmill. Again, we're going to use this perspective line to give us this angle of that line that would come off the window there. And the same thing can be said for this barn door, the angle, which is very almost parallel to the horizon line because it's so close. It's so much closer to the horizon line. There you go. Okay, now on the other side, it's pretty barren, and maybe there's a mountain here that we can look at, right? Maybe there's a mountain in the distance. So the way I do, I just kind of sketch in a mountain shape here. Maybe it's a hill that kind of comes and meets these trees. And it's all in how you color it. Like I said, we normally use pastels to color our perspective scene. But you guys can use crayons, markers. We could even watercolor it. I'm going to save the coloring lesson. I'm going to think on it because I might want to do some Crayola marker and then adding water in to kind of give it that loose look, as I did put some clouds in the sky. So maybe we can give it that these can stay white. Just a nice balmy day out on the farm. If you had a crop, maybe this is a crop that was corn and it was tall. Again, that would be the same. But again, we just kept it really simple in this original one and just did different colors. We did use a colored piece of paper to create this on. So it's a little bit different than what we're doing here. So thanks for joining me today. I know that was kind of a longer video. Next week we'll continue with coloring. Have your markers ready or crayons, and we'll see. We might do some crayon resists too. That might be fun to do. All right, let me play around with it. I'll see you guys next